Tutorial on how to do projection maps for characters, especially low poly ones. I'm going to be reading in a file of a character here, Sentinel, and he's got absolutely no textures on him whatsoever. You can see 4, 5, 6, and if you check in the multi-lister, you can see he's got nothing. Now, how do you make a good texture so that this character looks like they actually are a Sentinel? You can see here in the UV texture map that texture editor that the UVs have been laid out like this, and in some cases the seams, such as the shoulder to the arm, are not concurrent. They don't really go over from one immediately to the next in the texture. So how do you get that nice smooth shading without going out of your mind trying to figure out exactly what part goes onto this texture here? You know, you grab the UV set here and then you take a look to see where it's grabbed. Oh, it's there. Or grab the whole of the shell and then see where the whole of the shell is. The problem is you really can't tell where things are. Even if you can tell that this is that's a belt, you don't really know exactly you know, how you're going to make that color blend easily in with the legs, which are down here. So here's how I do it. I use something called a projection map. A projection map is a little more complex to set up, but it gives you great results. Without having to paint right on the polygons and try to make everything match up. What we do is we go to Create, and then when you get a Create Render node, pop on Lambert. Now unfortunately I got some silliness here with my Maya, and it's not showing me the textures. So what I do is I come up here and I say Filter, and I go down to Materials. It doesn't show me all the different shaders that I've already created, but it does show me the different materials. So let's try this again. Let's go to Create, Lambert. You're not actually going to see it here, so I'm going to go down to Filter, Materials. Now I do see it, and I want to rename these things because it just gets you to work a little cleaner. Double click on it. I always name the materials, you know, the name of the character underscore material, and this is the Sentinel material. I'm going to click on this to go back one step. Well, we haven't affixed it yet, so it doesn't really have a shader yet. And I will come up here and assign it, and it'll say, well, you got to create a shading group. This is just a material. I say, fine, let's do that. And now, under General, instead of Materials, you can see that actually it did bring up a shader. I double-click on the shader, and sorry, the material got named correctly. It's a material. It's a cylinder. The shader is a sphere, and so I come up here and I type in shader. So we've got shader, we've got material. Boom, boom, and it's cleanly named. Good. So double clicking on this again. Under color, click on the checkerboard. Checkerboard will give you a bunch of options. This is a very important part of the process. Under normal, press projection and go to file. It will create an actual 3D projection, and you can tell you that since there's no file loaded, it puts immediately the character in black. But one of the advantages of this is that you can see it. You can actually see the texture that we've created. And you do that by going up here to Show, turn everything off, go to Polygons, and then go to Show Textures. There we are. Now what I did very quickly is I double clicked on this and I went here to Fit to B box, fit to the bounding box of this character, and it immediately snapped this texture to the parameters of that geometry. Now if your geometry is created really, really weird, it's going to be stretched out here and stretched out there, and this, you know, if you've got one point out here in space that you forgot about, the texture may be much wider, but you really want to kind of bring it around just the character's silhouette. And you can do this interactively too. You know, you don't have to just stay with the bounding box, the automated bounding box. In fact, I like to have just a little wiggle room so that you can see quickly that you have some space between the edge of the texture and the edge of the character. And you want to do this so that everything is perfectly symmetrical. So we're going to go from here. Now one of the tricks that I've used in the past, by the way, in case you don't, the bounding box doesn't work, I'm going to do a couple of undos here until the bounding box goes away. Okay, there we are. Is the bounding box comes in like that. Now the way that I've done my units allow me to drag the type in, you actually physically can grab this texture projection. It shows up in the outliner. Place 3D texture. At this point, I'd like to rename this as well. Sentinel, and I just call this 3D cube. So Sentinel 3D cube, and I'm going to go through this and make sure that everything is named correctly. Projection, so this what I name is Sentinel Hammer, because it's a hammer icon. And under the file, I name it Sentinel File. Everything is very cleanly named with the character's name and then whatever that is afterwards. So you've got the shader, you've got the material. Clicking on this brings you forward more. You've got the hammer, you get the 3D cube, and you've got the file. Wonderful. I'd like to turn that off. Don't like any filtering. So what I've done to make it scalable is you can bring the texture map up one, and you can see that it's now pretty much level with the grid floor. At this point, I press the Insert key in the keyboard, and it moves the pivot point of whatever I've selected. In this case, it's the texture. So what I do then is I press and hold down the X button, and you can actually see the icon there changing when I do that. So I hold it down until it goes from a square to a circle. This will make it snap to the grid, and I simply grab the center of the yellow ball and I move it down to the middle here. It will snap to the center of the world, and now when I press Q and W, E, R to go back to my scaling and rotation controls, I can now scale this uniformly so that I can scale it up interactively so that it fits the Sentinel top by my hand perfectly, and now I scale it in X so it does exactly that. Two different ways of getting the same effect, because sometimes the bounding box is not going to be your best friend and you want to do it by hand. That's the way to do it. Just do it like I've shown you. Okay, so moving on. Let's go back to the texture map. Sentinel shader, Sentinel material, and Sentinel 3D cube, Sentinel file. Wonderful. Okay, so what do we do now? Bring up Adobe Photoshop. I've already brought it up previously. And bring up Google. You're going to be Googling for images. Okay, so here's what I've done. I Googled for Marvel, which is Marvel Comics, Sentinel front. And this is what I've done for basic keywords so that I can see a hit that starts showing me the design of the Sentinel. Now I happen to know it's a Marvel character, so I type those in to get rid of all the other things. If I type in Sentinel, I get all kinds of cars, and I get characters that have nothing to do with Marvel Comics. So I want to kind of glean all that other stuff out by putting in some basic keywords of Marvel, Sentinel, front. One of the first hits I get, boom, this toy, which is a Sentinel. Lovely. Let's take a look at these. I'm going to open these out into different tabs, and that's pretty much all I'm going to need. Yeah, I think that's all I'm going to need for now. Okay, Captain Toy. Thank you, Captain. This is a pretty good one, so we just copy image, then go into Photoshop right here and paste it. New, paste, and we have this image. Wonderful. Another image that we can grab is, let's just scroll down here. Okay, there's another image of him, pretty much full body. Nice. There we are. And one more. See, the reason I don't like these images is they're really contrast sharp. You can see these highlights and everything else. You really don't want a lot of highlights on your picture. You want some vague highlights like this. The problem is that it looks really great when it's standing there, but when the character starts moving, then it's really not going to look that good.